Chào mừng quý vị trở lại với chương trình VOR On Air của tổ chức Vietnamese American Roundtable thực hiện. Buổi ghi âm ngày hôm nay sẽ là bằng tiếng Anh và Nguyen sẽ cố gắng thông dịch lại bằng tiếng Việt một cách trọn vẹn nhất. Nhưng mà nếu mà có gì sơ sót thì mong quý vị bỏ qua cho. Mục đích của buổi nói chuyện ngày hôm nay thưa quý vị là Nguyen, Megan và Tiana muốn giới thiệu đến quý vị anh Lâm Nguyễn. Hiện tại là anh Lâm đang làm việc trong văn phòng của nghị viên David Cohen, tức là nghị viên của khu vực 4, thành phố San Jose. Hiện tại anh Lâm đang làm việc với một cái tư cách là người Chief of Staff. Anh có rất nhiều những cái việc làm trong cộng đồng. Và ngày hôm nay thì Megan và Tiana sẽ là hai người thực tập viên của VOR. Hai em rất là quan tâm đến việc bầu cử về chính trị cũng như là việc đấu tranh giành quyền lợi cho cộng đồng. Vậy thì trước khi mà Nguyên nhường lại quyền phỏng vấn cho Tiana thì Nguyên muốn hỏi anh Lâm một câu là anh Lâm, are you still at City Hall? Are you still at work? It's 7:30.
7:30 and I just finished work 15 minutes ago.
Whew, busy, busy. All right, Tiana, pass it on to you.
Oh, thank you, Nguyen, for the introduction, and thank you, Lum, for being with us today. So, as Nguyen was saying, Lum is currently working at San Jose's District 4. Lum, do you think you can tell us a little bit about your role, what you do for San Jose's District 4, what keeps you up at night, and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. My role is the chief of staff for Councilmember David Cohen. Um, the the easiest way for me to describe my job as a chief of staff is if David is the CEO of a company, I'm the COO. So I'm the operations director, which means I have everything when it comes to staff and budgeting, making sure that the office runs. But I'm also his primary advisor on policy as well as politics. So from that perspective, I serve as his universal advisor for most of the things that happen, both inside of City Hall and outside of City Hall that affects our job here at the city. Also, from a constituent perspective, too, I live in District 4, and I also grew up in District 4. So I went to elementary school, middle school, and high school in District 4. So the challenges that face the district specifically are very personal to me. My parents also still live in District 4, so I have my entire family's there. So from that perspective, dealing with the problems in District 4 gives me a very clear sense of both accomplishment as well as purpose for being able to serve the people within my district because they're my people, and it's where I live. So I'm helping to better my home, for lack of a better way of saying it. As for things that keep me up at night, obviously it's most of the problems that we see on a daily basis, things like affordable housing, and helping with the affordable housing crisis, which is, what we do with the budget process and being able to affect that. Also homelessness. Homelessness is a big challenge that we're trying to tackle in the city as a whole. I'm proud to say that for the first time in, I think, a decade, the number of homeless people in the city of San Jose decreased for the first time in a long time. And that has been some work that we're very, very proud of because we've been working very hard on that.
Cảm ơn Lâm rất là nhiều. Anh Lâm, do you mind sharing with us what District 4 is?
Oh, sure. District 4 is the Berryessa area, North San Jose, just south of Milpitas. North San Jose around the just south of 237 and then all of Alviso. So it's the northern corner of the city of San Jose that has roughly 108,000 people, I think is the total number of constituents.
Yes. Thank you, anh Lâm. Just let me translate a little bit here. Anh Lâm đã làm việc là một chief of staff của khu vực 4 thành phố San Jose. Thì những cái việc mà anh Lâm làm là quản lý cái khu vực của mình và là coi như giống như là người là giám đốc điều hành vậy đó trong một cái công ty. Anh Lâm đã chia sẻ với quý vị là đã có những cái thành tựu của anh và những như thành phố San Jose đã đạt được là giảm cái số lượng người vô gia cư xuống và xây dựng nhiều cái nhà cửa giá rẻ hoặc là nhà cửa mà có thể người dân có thể trả tiền mà không phải là bị quá gọi là quá nặng nề về cái việc mà trả tiền rent. Thì anh Lâm trong cộng đồng Việt Nam mình đó anh Lâm, cái chữ mà Chief of Staff á, hoặc là COO á, thì mọi người vẫn không có hiểu rõ lắm là như thế nào, tại vì rất là ít người Việt Nam mà làm cái chức vụ là Chief of Staff hoặc là làm cho một cái elected official hay là làm việc trong một cái tổ chức này kia, một người mà gọi là nghị viên. Thì anh có thể nói thêm là what do you do as a Chief of Staff for Councilman?
Yeah, sure. I think an easy way to explain it is, if my council member is, as an elected official, is the owner of the business, I'm the general manager. So I manage the day-to-day operations of the business. I make sure that everything's working. I make sure that the staff that I have for the elected office is well supported. So I have a community engagement staff, I have a policy staff, I have a communication staff, and I make sure, like, my job is to make sure that they have the resources they need, and that I remove as many obstacles as I can, in order for them to do their jobs better. Um, and then provide them the support whenever they need it. Because, obviously working in government, there are times where you have to have some very, very difficult conversations. And I'm a firm believer in, the more success you have in your life is purely based on the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. And so that is one of my primary jobs, not just for my staff, but also for my council member as well. I'm not afraid of confrontation. And I think as a chief of staff, you have to be the person that is willing to dive headfirst into confrontation in order to make sure that everyone at the table can have conversations about very important topics. And that's something that's really challenging at the city, as I'm sure you know. Almost everything we deal with is very difficult. And so from that perspective, everyone's going to have an opinion. And being able to take all of those different perspectives and all of those different opinions and synthesize them together into a solution that may not make everybody happy, but may produce a good outcome that will eventually be beneficial to not just the community in your district, but also to the city of San Jose.
Cảm ơn anh Lâm rất là nhiều. So, speaking of uncomfortable conversation, Megan, em có câu hỏi for anh Lâm, right? About the uncomfortable conversation.
It's really amazing to hear your insights. And if I could clarify one thing, when you sign up to work for an elected official,
Mhm.
you may not have a job if the official does not get reelected for their second term, right?
Of course. And the uncertainty of elections is always a part of the equation, for any of us who work in public service. That being said, though, I'm a bit crazier than most people. My expectation is that I can find a job. And so I think that the most effective way that you can work in public service is to go in eyes open, and head first, for lack of a better way of saying it. And so I think, there's a certain sense of courage and bravery that you have to have, in order to be effective in this line of work. And given the initial conversation that we had here, you all know now that I've changed my career quite a few times. And so from that perspective, I don't have a fear about changing my career. I mean, don't get me wrong, though. We want to continue doing the work that we do. And every time you have a new elected official or you go somewhere else in public service, you have to hit the reset button. So in my past, for example, I've worked at the California State Senate for two different senators. I worked for Senator Cortese as well as Senator Jim Bell. And at each transition point, there's a reset. You have to learn the job. You have to learn the elected official. You have to learn what their priorities are. And then obviously the level of government matters a lot too. So for example, transitioning from the California State Senate to working at the city council is a very rough transition. At the state level, you're dealing with budgets of billions of dollars, and you're working on one particular bill for 3, 4, 5, 6 months at a time. Versus at the city level, where you're dealing with tens of millions of dollars, but you're dealing with policy that literally changes day to day. So, for example, last week, we got word of 3 different policies, and within 48 hours, we had 3 different policies written that go to council, that get voted on. And, from that point, you're making policy not in a matter of months, but sometimes in a matter of hours. And obviously, from the perspective of, a chief of staff, it's not just my job to make sure that we write good policy. It's also my job to make sure the policy gets passed. And so from that perspective, I have to get the buy-in of city staff. I have to work with my partners in what's called the Brown Act, which is other council offices, in order to get their buy-in and make sure that we have the votes, because I'm a firm believer of this. I do not want to waste my time writing policy that's not going to pass. So I work very, very diligently in order to make sure that we have the votes for that. And the overall of that is the message, at least from my perspective, is I always I wake up every morning telling myself one very simple thing, which is, this is not about me. And as long as I keep that mantra in my mind, I'm always there to do the best work that I can for the citizens of San Jose. And because my guiding light is always going to be the work that I want to do for other people, I feel like that will prove itself over time, and the results of my work will show over time, which is why, as much as there is uncertainty when it comes to, the elections that come, like, what if my boss doesn't get reelected? This may sound crazy, but I don't care. And the reason I don't care is I'm going to land somewhere else and I'm going to keep doing good work. And because the bug of public service has kind of bitten me pretty hard, I'm going to do this work for the rest of my career. And knowing that removes that uncertainty. I'm going to work somewhere. It may not be this office, but I will continue to do public service.
That's awesome. Cảm ơn anh Lâm rất là nhiều. Giống như là lúc nãy quý vị cũng nghe anh Lâm nói bằng tiếng Anh, đó là cái việc mà đi làm cho một cái nghị viên hoặc là cho một thị trưởng, hoặc là một người mà tiếng Anh người ta gọi là elected official đó, thì họ mỗi người sẽ phải có một cái term riêng khác nhau. Là có những người ta sẽ serve khoảng 2 năm, người 4 năm. Thì những người nhân viên như là anh Lâm đó, làm việc cho những cái nghị viên hay là thị trưởng, thì họ nhận cái công việc đó, họ biết chắc là không phải là biết chắc, mà là họ sẽ phải tự thấu hiểu là trong vòng 2 năm hoặc là trong vòng 4 năm đó là có nguy cơ là sẽ không còn việc làm, là sẽ bị thất nghiệp. Thì khi mà anh Lâm có chia sẻ với lại Megan và Tiana và Nguyên là vì anh rất là đam mê cái việc mà phục vụ cho cộng đồng, cho nên là cái chuyện mà bị thất nghiệp hoặc là phải tìm việc mới trong vòng 2-4 năm thì cũng không có quan trọng lắm, bởi vì cái việc mà phục vụ cho cộng đồng là cái việc mà anh Lâm muốn làm từ giờ cho đến cuối đời rồi. Yeah. So Tiana, did you have another question for anh Lâm?
Yes, I did. So, do you think you can share some tips on how young adults such as myself and Megan can get civically involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can combine a couple of really important statements here when it comes to why civic engagement is so important. My simple answer to that is always do whatever you can, because it doesn't have to be in government in order to be civically engaged. I mean, don't get me wrong, it all eventually leads to the same funnels when it comes to whether that's public service as part of a community-based organization or a nonprofit, or in government itself. There are always different paths to public service. I suggest everything. Join a city commission if you can. Like our youngest commissioner in District 4 is 17. So it's never too early and it's never too late. Our oldest commissioner is 47. So, at any point within that span, like you never know when the bug of public service is gonna to bite you and motivate you to get into public service. Like with me, for example, I wasn't civically engaged at all until I was 40. But since then, I've been involved in 16 campaigns and have had 3 different jobs at 3 very different offices doing very difficult work because I love what I do. And none of these tasks by themselves are the end goal. What ultimately matters the most is that you build the relationships, and that you build the knowledge base that you need in order to understand what it takes to get laws passed or policies voted on and passed at every level of government. So I do suggest for anyone who is trying to get into civic engagement, regardless of the age you are, mostly with young people, because I try my best to involve as many young people as possible. I'm a big proponent of internships, big proponent of shadowing people if you have the option. I know for some people that's not really an option. You have to work. I was in that situation. So finding an office that will allow you to shadow a person whose principles and process you agree with and you can learn from, and using that as an opportunity to mentor, you'd be surprised how many elected officials not only are willing to do that, but really love doing that. One of the first elected officials I ever met, who he's now running for Congress, is Evan Lowe. And he has been such a valuable friend and mentor to me, along with his district director, Patrick Aarons, as well as, Assembly Member Osh Kalra. They've been such good friends. And, regardless of whether they've, been mentors in other ways, they've taught me to be a better person, to be more clear about what my goals are as a person in public service. So find a way to get into any office you can. And they're always willing. And if you can do that, the moment you start feeling like you want to work within some kind of office, kind of start to hone your passions a little bit. So start to understand what you really care about. Like, is it housing? Is it food insecurity? Is it public safety? Whatever the issue is, if you have some kind of avenue that gets you into talking with an elected official, then at that point you have a much clearer path towards being able to learn from them, because the information that you learn is kind of translatable from issue to issue, but the foundational knowledge of how to get a policy passed, how to do community engagement, how to get organizations involved, how to lobby votes, all of those things are useful regardless of what policy you're doing and what level of government you're at, if you're at government at all. So I think that's what I would suggest is the first moment you can find a way to get into an elected office as either an intern or an employee, even if you're working there 5 hours a week. They will be very, very valuable 5 hours if you go into it with the right approach.
Cảm ơn Lâm. I know Megan may have some off-topic questions because she is right now a youth commissioner for District 7. But let me translate what anh Lâm was saying. First is that, thưa quý vị, anh Lâm nói là những cái người bạn trẻ đó, những người mà còn trẻ muốn tìm hiểu thêm về chính trị, thì anh Lâm khuyên đó là nên là tham gia vào, tiếng Việt Nam nó gọi là một cái ủy ban những bạn trẻ, đó gọi tiếng Anh nó gọi là Youth Commissioner. Thì trong cái khu vực của mình thì mình sống trong khu vực nào thì mình có thể tham gia vào trong cái Youth Commissioner trong khu vực đó. Và khi mà vào trong những cái Youth Commissioner này, quý vị có thể, các con em của quý vị có thể tìm hiểu thêm về cái cách là làm sao để cho một cái nghị định nó có thể thành luật, hoặc là một cái chiến lược nào của thành phố đang tạo nên để mà giảm đi cái nạn vô gia cư, hoặc là làm thế nào để mà cung cấp lại những cái thực phẩm cho những cộng đồng cơ nhở. Thì anh Lâm khuyên là các bạn trẻ nên tham gia vào trong những cái ủy ban này, và từ đó tìm ra một cái người, tiếng Anh nó gọi là mentor, một cái người mà hướng dẫn cho mình. Người đó có thể là người nghị viên, người thị trưởng, hoặc là một cái người nào mà làm việc trong chính phủ lâu dài rồi. Họ có thể mentor, họ có thể chỉ dẫn cho các em để mà các em có thể tìm hiểu thêm được về những cái hoài bão, những cái passion của mình, để mà sau này cái sự nghiệp có thể mà vươn tới những cái tầm xa hơn. Megan, I know you have a question for anh Lâm for sure.
For a second, let's acknowledge how fantastic your translation is. So I apologize ahead of time. My Vietnamese isn't the best, and so I wanted to make sure that I could convey my thoughts properly. But your translations are absolutely awesome. So I
No
just wanted to
problem.
acknowledge
Yeah,
that.
transcreate. Yeah, cool. Megan, do you have a question for anh Lâm?
No, I do, because I think it's awesome you mentioned, I think District 4's youth commissioner is actually one of my best friends. And I think you're referencing her. I'm District 7 youth commissioner. This is my first year on the youth commission, and I've had so many new opportunities. I didn't know it was possible for a person my age to get civically involved. I'm working on a policy right now. I'm looking to propose it with council member Nguyen, and that whole process, I'm just, it's actually such an amazing thing that we have a civic process that young people can get involved in. And it must be a good sign that I am here and I have that experience, and hopefully more youth like my age can get involved. So thank you so much. And yeah, it'd be really great to continue talking to you about this, but it seems like you have so many great experiences in civic process.
Well, she's also, so her and I have very similar paths. Our youth commissioner, she's also a writer, and she's a phenomenal writer. She is one of the best poets I've ever met in my life. And to give some perspective on that, I wrote a lot of poetry and actually taught poetry when I was younger, at Mission College, and I did some of the workshops and stuff like that. And just watching her journey and just seeing how incredible of a writer she is gives me such hope in the generation that follows me, when it comes to being able to gain that perspective and learn, and being able to synthesize all of these different perspectives from all of these different ages into an experience that's very genuinely Vietnamese. And that's something that I think is lacking in our civic process a lot, is having that practical cultural experience that guides how our policy is both written and how we interact with our constituents in, like the city of San Jose, for example. I think right now it's around 14% Vietnamese, and that is a significant portion of the population. And for better or for worse, part of the reason why I'm in government at all is because the lack of representation. And just being here as a chief of staff and being able to not just work in my own office, but being able to, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but like getting people into other offices as well. I'm slowly but surely trying to, fill the offices with younger, fresher perspectives that aren't born and bred in the world of politics, just so we can have perspectives that are very unique. And because I think I come from that school. And so the more of that we can get, I think the better off we all are. So say hi to her for me.
Tiana, em có câu hỏi gì nữa không for anh Lâm?
I do not. I just think it's really amazing the work that you're doing and then how you really want to incorporate younger generations into civic engagement as well. And it's
Well, the
really
one thing I think I'll leave everybody with, so I think this is a really important point, is how absolutely critical your vote is, and how incredibly important it is, not just to be civically engaged. Sure, that's important. But for people who don't really understand how close some of the elections that we typically face are, like, for example, up in Sunnyvale, the two candidates for a city council race were tied. And so they had to pick names out of a hat in order to determine who was going to be the council member. That dramatically affects the policy in the city. One of the senators that I work for was involved in a mayor's race where they lost by less than 400 votes. And in a city of 1 million people, 400 votes is nothing. That's a neighborhood. So it goes to show how absolutely critical it is. If you want representation and if you want to be part of the civic engagement process, the first and foremost thing you have to do is vote and get as many people to vote as possible. Because here's something that I always tell people. I hear this a lot, right? Like, my vote doesn't count, my vote doesn't matter, I don't care about politics. Well, guess who does care about politics? Your boss, your landlord, your bank, all of these people who have critical effects on your life care a lot about politics. And the reason I know that is because as a chief of staff, I have a lot of conversations with those people because they want to maintain some level of control over the policies that affect their businesses and their lives. So if they do it, you should definitely do it.
Cảm ơn anh Lâm rất nhiều. Cái lời cuối cùng mà anh Lâm muốn nói với quý vị và đặc biệt là các bạn trẻ là những cái lá phiếu của mọi người bỏ đều rất là quan trọng, tại vì cộng đồng Việt Nam á, có những cái thông tin mà Nguyen hay nghe là ôi cái chuyện mà bầu cử nó không có quan trọng đâu, tại vì người Việt Nam hay hiểu lầm về cái sự mà bầu cử ở quận hạt hoặc là ở thành phố với lại cái việc mà bầu cử của tổng thống. Thì electoral thì nó khác so với lại những cái việc bầu cử tại quận hoặc là tại thành phố. Thì họ hay nói là cái một lá phiếu chẳng có quan trọng gì đâu, một lá những người nào mà raise được nhiều tiền là người đó sẽ được thắng cử thôi. Nhưng mà anh Lâm có cho một số cái ví dụ là đã có những cái cuộc bầu cử ở Sunnyvale hoặc là những cái bầu cử ở trong quận hạt, ở trong tiểu bang mà họ sẽ hơn nhau không có nhiều, rất là ít, mà có những cái chuyện bầu cử mà nó còn là bằng cái số phiếu của nhau nữa, họ sẽ phải gọi là phải bầu cử lại, hoặc là lấy cái name ra, phải pick cái name trong một cái nón. Và thì qua cái buổi ghi âm ngày hôm nay thì Vo và anh Lâm và Megan và Tiana muốn nhắn gửi các quý vị trong cộng đồng Việt Nam và những bạn trẻ là hãy ghi danh bầu cử và hãy tìm hiểu thêm về việc là cái quyền lợi của mình khi mà mình bầu cử. Mình có cái quyền lợi như thế nào khi mà mình đang sống tại một cái thành phố, mình sẽ được bầu cử như thế nào, mình có cái ballot, cái measure ballot của mình như thế nào, mình có thể tìm hiểu thêm và mình có thể giúp cho bố mẹ, anh chị em của mình tránh xa những cái thông tin gọi là thông tin bậy bạ ở trên mạng, nó thông tin không đúng. Yeah. So any last word, Lâm, Megan and Tiana?
Yeah, just thank you. That's I think the more conversations that we have at every age, and there are people I work with that are in their 60s and people that I work with that are in their teen years. And I think the more of us that have this civic engagement and have this foundational civic knowledge, the more we can have conversations with the people that you're talking about, our friends, our neighbors, our family, the people who don't have as much access or interest as we do. and really giving them, not just the tools, but because a lot of what keeps people out of the civic engagement process is fear. You fear what you don't understand, and that lack of understanding, or at least the creation of that understanding, just gives you access. And the more access you have, the more you realize the difference you can make in your community. So I think this is really great. I love that you guys are doing this, and this is something that I really enjoyed doing.
Cảm ơn Lâm rất là nhiều. Vậy thì buổi nói chuyện ngày hôm nay xin được kết thúc. Chúng tôi xin cảm ơn quý vị. Cảm ơn anh Lâm. Thank you Megan and Joanna.
All right. Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye. Good night, everyone.